Welcome to Beyond the Microphone, a podcast about podcasters and the stories of how their shows came together, grew, and what they've discovered along the way. I'm your host, Adam Baruh. So I want to talk a little bit today before we get into our interview with our guest about the idea of having authority, feeling like, if you're just about to launch a new podcast and this is something you've never done before, do you need to be a subject matter expert? Do you need to have authority? Do you need to be a well-regarded expert, in the area that you want to have a podcast about? And I mean, my take on it is absolutely not. Really, there's two things that you need, which is passion and curiosity. And those will be the driver of what you do because, your audience will, if you bring passion and curiosity into your episodes, your audience is going to get hooked and they'll get interested in whatever you have to talk about. So, for me, I do a lot of guest-based interviews and really, so my episodes then become really just to highlight the guest and what they're doing. And, they're the subject matter experts in terms of what they're doing, what their podcasts are about, how they got started. And, for anybody who's, thinking about this and they've been thinking about it for a while and they just don't know that, they feel that they have the authority, maybe there's a little imposter syndrome that's kind of in there as well. Try to set that aside and try to really just focus on the passion and curiosity because that is going to feed you along the way as well. Most podcasters don't get into this work thinking that we're going to make all this money. We do it because we enjoy doing it. We like doing it. We like listening to podcasts and we love being a part of this community. This is a fantastic community. And ultimately why I created this particular podcast, Beyond the Microphone, is to get connected to people like our guest today here, Jaimie Beebe, who, started a podcast. And I'm super excited to talk about true crime podcasts because, whereas, my former podcast, The Change, which was around mental health, my only exposure to really the true crime podcast world is through Only Murders in the Building, which I do highly recommend. Very entertaining, very well done. So go check that out. But without further ado, let's bring in Jaimie. Welcome to Beyond the Microphone. Super excited you're here today. And, I'm just going to launch right into it. True crime, well, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, but also how did you get into true crime podcasting? Because that seems like, talking about curiosity, I think really that is probably one of the main drivers of the work that you're doing. So why don't I turn it over to you and tell us a bit about yourself?
Cool. Yes, I have been interested in true crime since I can remember, since I was a kid. In high school, I was watching some talk show. This was Oprah or something like that. And they were saying all these death row inmates, they're really lonely. People should write to them. I'm in high school. I'm yeah, that's a great idea. I don't tell my parents. So I start writing to death row inmates, give them my address, no problem.
Wow, okay.
Didn't really think much of it. My parents got mad, but I did continue writing to a lot of prisoners for a long time. I was just always so fascinated, I think, in I don't know, how can people commit these heinous crimes, and are they still cool people, even if they've
Sure.
kind of committed these heinous crimes? And some are and some aren't, I think it's just depends on the crime.
Okay.
So yes, I've always kind of just been interested in crime. I think because I haven't committed very many, maybe.
I like the idea of
how do
very
you do
many.
that?
I like that you had to caveat that.
I haven't committed any bad one,
Okay.
really. No, but so and I'm an avid podcast listener. I love podcasts and I listen to primarily pretty much only true crime podcasts. It fascinates me. And I wanted to do one and I called my business partner, my co-host, and I was like, hey, I really want to do a podcast. All the good murders are taken. Everyone's already doing, there's not enough murders out there anymore. Every time I turn around, I'm like, okay, this murder has been covered 10 times by 8 different podcasts. It's crazy. So I mostly called him to complain that I would never be a podcast host. And he's very logical and likes to think things through, whereas I am not really like that. I'm like, I'm going to do this today. I'm going to be this today. But he was like, no one's doing a podcast about stalking. And I was like, I don't know anything about stalking. That's stupid. I'm not going to do it. And I'm very dramatic. I hang up on him. I'm like, my life is over. I'll never be a podcast host. But what always happens is, I started to think about what he said. And I was like, wait, so there's this whole crime out there that I don't know anything about. Like, that's weird. Because I consider myself knowledgeable
Is it
about
weird?
these crimes. I mean, you don't really hear much about it other than like, stalker breaks into Kim Kardashian's house. I'm like,
Right.
how important can stalking be? Like, how much of a thing is it? And I started researching and it just went down this rabbit hole. Like, holy crap, like millions and millions of people are being stalked. And it's like horrific and traumatic and just awful. So, what kind of came out like first as me just being like, blasé about it. I was like, I want to do something about this. I want to help people change the laws. Like everything is screwed up and how you can possibly get justice if you are being stalked, or where do you go? What do you do? There's a lot to unpack. So being that I haven't been stalked, we decided that the best way to get the stories out was, to interview victims, survivors of stalkers.
Okay.
And see what was really going on here. So that's kind of how we started. And, we've been doing it for a little over 3 years. We've done over 200 interviews, which is crazy because there's a million more out there. Like there's so many people that deal with this. So that's kind of how we got started.
So, and you hear about like, the big name celebrities, and like David Letterman comes to mind, and I know there's so many others. So let's start with, you mentioned like the laws, like where do those fall short? Like in your research, and just doing this, as long as you've done it, like, where do you see the laws falling short in protecting people around stalking?
I mean, everywhere, pretty much everywhere. The cops aren't trained, police officers and authorities are not trained in dealing with scenarios like this. Like, you call the police officer after a crime has been committed, and they come and they find out who did it and clean it up, right? I mean, that's kind of the basics of what that is. But when you're dealing with stalking, you have to prove this pattern. So at what point do you bring these police officers in, and how do police officers realize that you're proving a pattern and you're proving fear, but not necessarily a crime that they're used to dealing with has been committed? Like, no one's been stabbed, nothing's been taken. So like, what do the police officers do?
Right. I guess they don't, it's not even a crime to stalk, right?
I mean, it is.
Okay.
But, it has to happen more than once, and you have to be afraid. So
can we stop real quick? Like, what does that mean to stalk though? Like, what is that, like just being followed? Like, I mean, obviously where it goes to like your house being broken into. Yeah. Like clearly, that's something that you can involve the law in, but like, I guess maybe like, let's take a step back. Like, what does it even mean to be stalked?
Yeah. And a lot of people have a hard time categorizing, because especially now there's so many different ways to be stalked. It's any kind of a pattern of unwanted attention. That's pretty wide. So it can be somebody, emailing you 100 times a day or 5 times a day. Like, it just really depends. And is it this unwanted attention? Is it causing fear? Is it, that fine line between harassment and stalking? And usually harassment turns into stalking anyway. Who is this person? Is it a stranger? Is it your ex? Or is this person following you physically? Are they, creating fake social media accounts to follow you? There's so much in it, but I think like the common denominator is like, are you scared? Is it causing a problem in your life in some way,
I mean, I bet a lot of people just go about for a while before they even know that that's even happening.
Yeah, or before they know that that's what it is, especially, I mean, and some people, they don't know they're being stalked for a long time, like if a stranger is stalking you, they might be real quiet about it for a while, until you notice. And, we have a lot going on in our lives. It's hard to notice these things. And it takes a while sometimes to like act upon it because, time goes by quickly and you're like, wait a minute, this person's been doing this for a month or 5 months or, 10 years. Like, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and I only imagine that like because everybody's out there on the internet now, I mean everything's just so public, it's hard to even like protect our children from just being out there. Like, what do we do? Like, do you have any thoughts or, opinions about how to navigate this in a very
Yeah.
public world that we live in nowadays?
Yeah. I mean, and everyone kind of deals with things differently. But I think number one is like, don't live in the what ifs or in the fear, but take, you know, adequate precautions for life, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're a girl and you live alone or really if you're anyone, you live alone or, whatever it might be, maybe don't post that. Maybe don't post, where you're at when you're there. I try to post things after I leave just in
Mm.
case. And I'm kind of bad about it, but I'm also, surrounded by people a lot, which is whatever. And also like with your comfort level, like what you're putting out online. Some people put out every thought that they have during the day and every place they go and everything they do. And some people do a lot less. So I think it's like what you're comfortable with and, just that adequate form of safety for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to like geotag where you're at and stuff like that. If you're on the dating apps, like how much information do you give out? Even if I send like one thing that I'm really weird about is like if I send a photo to somebody, I screenshot it and then send it.
Mm.
And that way they don't have any information as to where the photo is. Because
Yeah,
someone
like the
sends you a photo, you can
metadata.
find out where they were, when they took
Yeah.
it, like everything. So, like kind of depends. There's a lot of ways to stay safe. It just depends on where your piece of that lies.
Yeah, where your comfort level and what you're willing to, the time that you're willing, how important it is to you to have
Yeah.
that privacy. Let's rewind a little bit back to, then just being interested as a high school student, about crime and ultimately, talking with your partner about, there's this kind of untapped area around true crime that may be a category that you could speak about that would be unique in stalkers. So how did you then go from, tell us a little bit about that concept phase, going from just a bunch of ideas and discussions and conversations to, then putting those ideas on paper and forming a plan on how eventually you would launch a podcast around that.
Yeah. That was an interesting phase for me because I don't normally work with other people. I'm like all me all the time. But I didn't think that this was something I could do by myself. I think I just wasn't prepared for it. I didn't know anything about podcasting at all. So I prefer to go very quickly and jump right in. And my business partner is the complete opposite. I mean, like he's, overthinking every sentence and like, well, what about this? What about that? And I'm just like, oh my God, that's too much to think about. I just want to get things done. But it worked out really well because, then we kind of found that middle ground for us. So those first few days, what I did was I built like a whole deck. Like, what are we going to do? What are these, and I did so much research. Like I was like awake for days. I was like, oh, I need to find out more because I get really obsessed about things. So I did that. And then I went to a few different podcast companies and I was like, hey, would this be interesting for you? Like, do you guys want
Okay.
to like put this out? This thing that I haven't built yet. But it worked, and I
Okay.
did team up with a company. We did, me and my partner, we teamed up with Cast Media and they're great. We had a lot of trial and error in those first couple months. Like we would record an episode and it would kind of suck. Because because maybe it was like us talking about it, or it was like too like salacious, like, oh, and then this happened, and I
Okay.
wasn't looking for like this salacious, like I really wanted to be more ethical true crime
Okay.
reporting, rather than like sharing the bullet points of what happened,
Mm-hmm.
like I really wanted to do more of like, let's see what we can do to change these laws. Like, how can we help people?
Okay.
Because what I realized first and foremost is like, if I was stalked, like I would have no idea what to do. Like, who do you even call? Like, where do you go? And everyone that I talked to, like my friends were like, I don't know, I guess like you call 911. Cool. Like at what point? Like when someone sends you
Mm,
flowers, like,
right.
hi, it's 911. Yeah, this dude sent me flowers. Great. They're not gonna, it's, what do you do?
Right.
So I kind of really wanted to focus on that. And then we started reaching out to people who are advocates in the community and inviting them to come on the show and talk to us and tell us their story, but then also like what can you do if you're stalked? Like, that kind of thing. And that's kind of how it started taking off. Was we started finding all these people that have been stalked and like how they dealt with it on a personal level, on a professional level. A lot of people that we talk to are still being stalked, so they're just dealing with it because stalkers
Mm-hmm.
don't stop. Usually unless they go to jail or they're dead, or if they
Mm.
find someone new. And even if they find someone new, they oftentimes come back. So it's kind of like a lifelong thing for a lot of people.
So your business partner that you're speaking of, this is your co-host, Jake
Yeah.
Deptula.
Hey there, fellow podcasters. This is Tori Barker of the Creative Visionaries podcast, and I'm excited to introduce you to Podtask, the all-in-one platform designed to streamline your workflow and take your show to the next level. If you're tired of feeling overwhelmed by the tasks required to manage your podcast, then check out Podtask, where you can easily streamline your podcasting process and simplify your workflow. Say goodbye to the stress of managing multiple tasks and deadlines, and hello to a more efficient and productive podcasting experience. And it doesn't just stop there. Podtask also offers AI-based marketing tools that give your podcast a competitive edge. As a fellow podcaster, I know from experience how important it is to have a reliable and efficient tool like Podtask to keep you on track. It helps save me so much time in post-production, which allows me to focus on what really matters, creating great content for my listeners. So if you're ready to take your podcast to the next level, head over to podtask.com and sign up for a free forever plan and get started today.
Do you feel like you're not where you thought you'd be at this age? Do you feel like you've missed your chance for true happiness? Do you want more out of life? Hi, I'm Molly, and I am the host of I Am This Age, the podcast proving it's never too late, you're never too old, so go do that thing you're always talking about. I interview people who have made big changes after 40, where we get deep into the fears and insecurities felt when they made their change, how they navigated through them, and how you can too. Subscribe to I Am This Age wherever you get your podcasts, and join us every other Monday for the inspiration you need to go do that thing you've always been talking about.
In working together, how do you guys kind of tackle whichever pieces in terms of not just the interviews themselves, but all the ins and outs of running a podcast, the marketing, the guest research, you name it.
I mean, we luckily, I'm better at some things that he's not, and he's better at some things that I'm not. I have a background in production as a casting director, so I'm pretty good at finding people, whether they want to be found or not. No, I'm pretty good at finding people, and so it wasn't easy to start finding people that are being or have been stalked. People don't want to talk about it. It's not. It's kind of like domestic violence, and there's a lot of domestic violence in stalking, so it was hard to find people that want to talk about it. So I really started focusing on that. So I kind of do that aspect of it. I do a lot of the editing, a lot of the writing stuff. Jake is really good at like graphic arts and things like that. So he makes, the Instagram posts and things like that. So we just kind of divvy it up and, whoever has more time when, I guess. But we try to work ahead of schedule as much as possible so that there's less or no stress and involved in that.
And so, you're talking about like banking episodes, so recording a number of them so that you're kind of.
When we can. I mean, it's every single episode is an interview. So we have to kind of be open scheduled and, we both work from home, so that's good. So we do have open schedules, because we never know if we're talking to somebody in another country or across the world or whatever, what time they're available, if they're not, if they are working and their hours. And so we're kind of open on that. So we schedule them whenever other people can. And then, I take that time and I edit. We send it off. We're actually with Podcast One now. They're amazing. And we send it off to Podcast One. They do the final edits. Put the sponsors in, and it takes a little time.
It definitely takes a lot of time. And do you guys both have, are you guys monetized in your podcast, or do you have other jobs that you're also balancing?
Yeah, we are monetized. Luckily, we pretty much have been from early on. When we were with Cast Media, they really helped us out with that. I think the best way that we were able to create the awareness and get people going on this was one, because no one else was doing it, but then also we advertised a lot on other podcasts, other true crime podcasts. Because we
also, is that something you paid for, or how did you kind of facilitate that?
We did. Some of them were paid, and some of them we just we swap. We do promo swap.
Yep.
Which we still do all the time. Because my theory is I have a decent following on Instagram. I don't think any of my Instagram followers listen to my podcast. And I've noticed there's not a correlation like that. I mean, most of my Instagram followers are like, oh, let's see this chick in a bikini. It's a whole different world out there. But podcast listeners listen to podcasts. So where are you going to find more podcast listeners in other podcasts?
Right.
So that's why and it's weird because it's not there's not really a competition based thing between podcasts.
Totally.
I listen to all of them.
Yeah.
There's lots of hours in the day for how many podcasts I listen to. So it's not like I'm going to listen to this one and not that one. You know what I mean? So I think it's kind of a cool community to be in that respect, because we're all let's swap. Oh, you have a new podcast coming out. Cool. Let me talk about it on my show, because my listeners are probably going to want to hear that.
Yeah.
It's cool.
I've said the same thing with a number of people that, because I have a regular other job too. And it's, I lead this IT consulting company, and it's just a different, you work with people that are in a very competitive landscape. But this podcasting community, it's not that. It's not like you have this finite amount of ears that you're trying to, expose your podcast to. So it's great. And I find podcasters to be very collaborative and always open to sharing. So, for those of you that are listening and looking for tips, guest spotting, going on other podcasts, trailer swaps, promo swaps, episode guest spot swaps, all of those are really great. And for the most part are free ways to get yourself exposed to new audiences. So highly recommended to do that and make connections and meet people. Just get out there and start talking to people, much like I'm doing with you here today, Jaimie. So,
and so many people are doing podcasts because they just want to. I think everyone is just doing it because they want to. Not forcing anyone to do a podcast, I hope. And so, but I think it's that love of oh, I want to do this. And so that collaboration is just there. It's so fun.
Yeah. It's it's a bonus because, just doing this and connecting with other people. And, yesterday I had an interview with somebody and it got very emotional. She was getting very emotional, and it's this space that we create, these conversations, like, you know, you always have to remember, like, you know, for a lot of people that are in this space, you know, a lot of these stories are coming out of painful experiences, or, you know, just like your story, really just want, you know, very much out of curiosity, just, but all coming from a place of creativity and connection. And, you know, in a world where, you know, most people work from home and are, you know, you work for companies and you work remote, like, you know, I feel like we need connections more. And
Totally.
I think that podcasting really is you know, even though like you and I are connecting here face to face, not in person, but face to face, but even the act of listening to a podcast, I think is a connection, and it does feed something within us just listening. It's like we're part of an audience. Like we're, you know, this one story, this one podcast speaker, I think it was on The Moth. His name is Ray Christian, and he talked about his experience with PTSD. And I mean, just as a listener, going through his story and how he's a fantastic storyteller, but how he related his story, I mean, you can't help but get moved. And that's the beauty of podcasting, and why I think it's just so relevant in today's world, is because, you know, in a world that makes it harder for us to get those connections, podcasting is a way for us to still have that, and to, you know, get that emotional, you know, get ourselves out of our normal emotional comfort zone to feel something different, something what somebody else went through, you know?
Totally. And, you know, and you get into that world, you know, like there's podcasts I listen to where like, I'm like, oh, I better tune in. Like, I need to find out what happened to their dog. Like, it's nothing about their dog, but I know that they're going to be like, oh yeah, my dog was sick. And then I just need to know if their dog is better, but also hear the true crime story that they're going to tell, you know? So you do kind of get to know people. It's very much like, you know, it's a different part of social media, I think.
Yeah. Well, I want to stick with the monetization a little bit, because what you guys have been able to achieve is very unique. But a lot of people, when they get into podcasting, they think that's going to be the recipe for them. But it's you know, very difficult to get sponsorship, very difficult to make money doing this work that we do. So, you know, how do you think you guys were able to achieve that sponsorship type of monetization? And, you know, in your experience, like, does it come down to download numbers? Like, what are sponsors looking for that you guys have been able to kind of like focus in on and keep that money coming in?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, and for anyone, it's kind of the perfect storm. We were doing something that wasn't out there, which is cool. We were lucky enough to team up with a company because I didn't even, honestly, when I started, I'm not sure I realized that you could really make money, get sponsors on a podcast. I just wanted to do it. And so, you know, they were able to help us a lot with the whole monetization thing of things. But yeah, it's download numbers. It's to start off, you need the right amount of subscribers, download numbers, all that kind of stuff. And then in order to keep sponsors, not only that, like people have to click on things and like use that little, you know, 10% off coupon that we talk about or whatever it is. Like it has to make sense for the sponsors too. You know, they might do a trial thing where, you know, we're doing an ad for something, and if no one's reaching out and getting that and purchasing it from like using our coupon or whatever, they aren't going to continue. You know, it's a little bit of a thing there that, you know, we don't really have a lot of control over. But I do, you know, we're with Podcast One now, and they do all of our monetization for us. And I think that they do a great job with trying to find, you know, sponsors that our listeners would be interested in. And I think that we have kind of an interesting group of listeners. It's a lot of people who've been through trauma, a lot of survivors, a lot of people who are currently being stalked. So like our listeners are, and then we have like a lot of true crime people that like want to hear about it and stuff like that. But our listeners are like great. Like they've been with us since day one. They start over at the first episode. Like they're really awesome. And I think that podcast one has, honed in on that for us, luckily. And so I think our sponsors are happy.
That's cool.
I hope.
And how do you stay engaged and connected with your audience? Like, do you guys do email lists and Patreon?
On
Like,
social
do you have
media? Yeah, on social media a lot. And then also we have a Patreon that we don't use too much. I mean, a little, I guess. I don't know. But we have like Instagram, TikTok, things like that. And then, during our show, we are a little bit different where we don't have a lot of, like, as hosts, we don't talk a lot about ourselves really at all. And so that is different than a lot of people. So I think that when people want to know more about us, like we do guests on a lot of other podcasts, and, social media and stuff like that. So that's kind of how we interact more, because that's really the only way for us. Because our podcast is a little bit, we're not making jokes. There's no jokes on there. There's no fun times, and we don't even talk that much, to be honest. It's more of a platform for, the people that we're interviewing so that they can get their story out and hopefully help others. So.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got a new podcast you're working on called The Last Trip, recreating someone's last day on vacation where they subsequently went missing or were murdered. So how did the concept for that show come together? Kind of where are you at in getting that launched?
Yeah, so that I am really excited about. I travel a lot by myself. Like, I try to hit a new country every month. Like, I'm super into traveling. I love it so much. And I like solo travel, which is kind of crazy for like, I'm 5'3" and blonde. Like, I stick out, especially
my
depending
wife
on
is
what
same
country.
thing. My wife's gone to some really sketchy places and probably looks the same.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah. I've definitely gone to some sketchy places. Like, my parents are like, no, but I think that there's a great, I think it's a great way to travel. Not going to wait around for somebody. But what I usually do, or I noticed what I would start doing is like, I like to see weird stuff. I usually go to cemeteries when I travel and like whatever, So I started looking up like what, other vacationers went missing or got murdered while they were in the places I wanted to go to. And I was like, wow, I should do a podcast about this because I'm super interested. Like, this is the first thing I look up when I book a plane ticket, not like the cool sightseeing stuff, but like, did anyone get murdered here? It's just, I know.
How do you even look, like, where do you even look that stuff up? Just Google it?
Just, news, Google. I mean, the internet is such a wild west place. Still, it's great. Yeah. So I started doing that kind of research for fun. And I was like, if I'm doing this for fun, I might as well see if anyone else wants to hear it. So I have about 10 episodes recorded right now, but I have not put it out yet because I am talking with a couple different production companies to see if this is more something that we could do, like streaming network, TV, or if I want to leave it as a podcast. Ideally, both at the same time would be cool, in like a little bit of different format.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll see. And then, depending on how that goes, I'll be releasing the podcast either way because I've already recorded like 10 episodes. But it's just fascinating to me, like, so many people go missing or get murdered on vacation. Like, that's where I'm most aware,
Yeah, that's scary to think about.
But a lot of people aren't. And maybe I'm not as aware as I think I think I am now because I research it so thoroughly, but very interesting.
Okay, cool. So yeah, the new podcast, and then even like you said, like kind of maybe it might be something beyond just a podcast. So where, what do you see for yourself? What are some, if you kind of think about maybe the next couple of years, like, where do you see yourself going with the type of work that you want to do?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I am very, like, I've probably had every type of job you can imagine and career and everything else. My main goal, I think, since like high school has always been to not have to go into an office and make enough money to travel by not going into an office. that's just, and it's always just been my goal. You know, my parents, they have kind of a hard time understanding that I don't go anywhere to work, even though like there's movies out there that they can watch and my name is on it because I cast the movie, but they're just like, you should get a job. Like, guys,
parents, come on.
Like, I own a house in Hollywood. I'm doing okay. But you know, they're still like, every once in a while, they're like, you know, the gas station by our house is hiring. You could work full time. Like, guys, like, I won't do that. But even if I broke, I can't see myself moving back to my hometown working full time in a gas station.
Yeah. Where is your hometown, by the way?
Huh?
Where is your hometown? Where are you from?
I grew up in Storm Lake, Iowa. My parents actually live in Washburn, Wisconsin now, which is like way north. I think there's still snow. Crazy.
Yeah.
But
well, here in Southern California, we're not. I don't know. It feels like winter still.
It's that. Well, I'm in LA now, and I'm just like, I feel like there's no sunlight. It's cold.
Crazy. I'm in San Diego, so we've been kind of hit with the same weather.
It's not.
So lastly, the last question is, where can people find out more about you? You mentioned Instagram, like what's the best way people can kind of, check out what you're doing? Obviously, Strictly Stalking is, you can check that out anywhere, I'm imagining, on, anywhere podcasts can be found. But yeah, where can people connect with you?
Yeah, my personal Instagram is feathergirl77. It's a lot of my travels, my day-to-day. It's a lot of pictures of me. That's about it.
Okay.
Me and my dog. I'm single, so it's me and my dog. And I travel a lot, so it's me and my dog traveling. I also own a bikini company, so there's a lot of pictures of that in there. My bikini company is The Boyfriend Bikini, so that's also on Instagram. You can hold me there. At The Boyfriend Bikini. The podcast is at Strictly Stalking Pod, so you can reach out on that Instagram. That's anywhere you can Google me. I'm around. I'm pretty easy to find.
All right. Well, hey, listen, thank you so much for being here today. It's been fascinating to just hear about this, for me personally, just a side of podcasting that I haven't really explored all that much. Definitely curious and interested, but just haven't really done it. So it's really fascinating to me to hear people that are just curious about, this type of aspect of living, right? There are people that get stalked, stuff happens, whether you're on vacation or not. And so, this has just been fascinating to listen to. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Great being here.
Yeah, thank you. Jaimie Beebe grew up in the Midwest, making her way out to Los Angeles to pursue a career in production, working as a film and TV casting director. Recently, she developed, produces, and co-hosts the popular true crime podcast, Strictly Stalking. Along with her co-host, she interviews survivors of stalkers, giving them a platform to create awareness about an often underreported crime. She's about to launch her new podcast, The Last Trip, recreating someone's last day in paradise, covering murdered and missing people from their vacations. Her latest adventure is The Boyfriend Bikini, a bikini company that she designed to help all women feel confident and level up while looking their best on the beach. Go check out Jaimie's podcast, Strictly Stalking, wherever you listen to podcasts, or follow her on Instagram at feathergirl77. Beyond the Microphone is sponsored by Podtask. Whether you're just starting out in podcasting or you've been at this a while and are looking to save time so you can create amazing content for your listeners, go check out Podtask, a podcast management and marketing platform designed by podcasters for podcasters. With Podtask's automated workflow and AI-based marketing tools, you'll save time and sanity and be better equipped to grow your podcasts. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time on Beyond the Microphone.
Beyond the Microphone is produced and distributed by EIQ Media Group, LLC. Elevate your emotional IQ with podcasts and content focused on entrepreneurship, overcoming adversity, stories of emotional courage, women's health, aging, and more.